I never thought I'd find myself sitting here, typing this out like some confession on a relationship advice forum. Yet here I am. My name's Jake, I'm 35, and I used to think I had a pretty solid marriage. We've been together for 10 years, and I always thought that kind of love could weather any storm. But all it took was a few months of subtle changes and a couple of texts, and my world came crashing down. It all started when Emily began staying late at work more often. She's an AI ethics consultant, and her job can be demanding, but this felt different. I started noticing the little things. Her phone was always face down, and she had this new sense of secrecy about her. I brushed it off at first. Maybe she was just busy, or maybe I was being paranoid. But then I saw the way she was texting, her face lighting up as she read her messages. I would catch her laughing at something on her phone, and I couldn't shake the nagging feeling in my gut. One Saturday afternoon, I was supposed to go help my buddy Mark move into his new apartment. I had planned the day out, but then I got a text from him that he had everything sorted. I was suddenly free and decided to surprise Emily with a lunch date. As I drove to her office, I couldn't shake the feeling of excitement. I imagined us laughing, reminiscing about old times and just enjoying each other's company. But as I pulled up, I noticed her car wasn't in the parking lot. I thought nothing of it at first. Maybe she went to grab coffee or something. But when I walked in and her coworker Jessica told me she left with a colleague, something in me snapped. I asked who she left with, and my heart dropped when Jessica said it was Tom, her colleague from the ethics department. Tom, the guy she had mentioned a few times in passing. A tall, charming guy with a knack for getting under my skin. I decided to follow them. I know it sounds crazy, but my instincts kicked in. I drove to the cafe down the street, and my heart raced as I spotted them sitting together on the patio. They were laughing, leaning in towards each other, and I felt a mix of anger and disbelief flood through me. It was as if the ground below me had vanished. I sat in my car, watching them, praying it was just a friendly lunch, but as I leaned closer to the window, I saw it. Their hands brushed against each other, lingering for just a moment too long. Emily's laugh was too carefree, too intimate. I couldn't take it anymore. I drove home, my mind racing. I had to confront her. I had to know what was really going on. When I got home, I paced the living room, the gravity of the situation weighing heavily on my chest. I had seen enough to know something was off, but I needed proof. I went to her nightstand and looked through her things for a clue, anything that would help me understand. That's when I found it. A small, folded piece of paper tucked away in a book. It was a dinner reservation for two at a fancy restaurant, signed with a heart. My heart sank. The gut-wrenching realization hit me like a freight train. When Emily came home that evening, she was all smiles, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. I had to know, had to confront her, but part of me was terrified of the fallout. I knew I should have waited for her to sit down for dinner, but I couldn't hold back any longer. I threw the paper at her and demanded to know who Tom was and why she was having dinner with him. The look that crossed her face was a cocktail of surprise and guilt. I remember her like a deer in headlights, stammering for words. She tried to brush it off as a work-related dinner, claiming it was all professional, but I could see the cracks in her facade. The way she fidgeted, the way her eyes darted away from mine told me everything I needed to know. I couldn't believe the lies spilling from her lips. I felt rage bubbling up inside me, and I knew I had to confront her with everything I had found. In that moment, I wasn't just angry. I felt betrayed, confused, and utterly devastated. I wanted to scream, to throw everything she held dear away, but instead I stood there, heartbroken, waiting for her to tell me the truth. And when she finally broke down, the confession cut deeper than any words could describe. She didn't just cheat on me, she had been lying to me for months. Emily's eyes softened as she finally began to speak, her voice trembling. "Jake, I can explain," she said, but I didn't want to hear her excuses. The room felt like it was closing in on me. I was losing her, losing everything. "It's not what you think, Tom and I, it was just a mistake." I was feeling lost and he was there to listen. A mistake, just a mistake. Those words echoed in my head like a relentless drumbeat. I felt a cold wave of disbelief wash over me. "A mistake? You think this is just a mistake?" I couldn't control my voice. It was rising, filled with anger. How many times did you sleep with him? How long has this been going on? With tears streaming down her face, she finally confessed. It only happened a few times. I didn't mean for it to turn into this. I just felt so alone. She looked at me with those big, pleading eyes, but I was done. I had stood by her through thick and thin, and in return, she had betrayed me with someone else. The betrayal felt like a knife twisting deeper inside me. You felt alone. What about me, Emily? I was here. I was always here. You could have talked to me. We could have figured it out together. Instead, you chose to sleep with him. I wanted to scream but held back, feeling the tears threaten to spill from my own eyes. The emotional turmoil was overwhelming, and I didn't know whether to punch a wall or break down and cry. As she continued to plead her case, her attempts to justify her actions only infuriated me more. I thought I could fix things on my own. I didn't want to burden you with my insecurities. It was all so twisted. She had made the choice to betray our vows, our trust, and now she was trying to paint herself as the victim. I felt like I was living in a nightmare from which I couldn't wake up. I took a step back, needing space to breathe, to think. So, what do you want me to do? Just forgive you and act like this did happen. The incredulity in my voice was undeniable. I could see her getting desperate, her desperation only fueling my rage. I can't just forget about it, Em. You shattered everything we built. In that moment, my mind raced. I was distraught, but I was also angry. Angry enough to think about what I could do next. My profession is rooted in technology and data analysis. I've spent years developing algorithms that identify patterns of behavior, especially in deception. I could use what I know to flip this situation on its head. I could gather every shred of evidence I could find and make her face the full weight of her choices. She had taken advantage of my love and trust, and now the tables would turn. As I formulated my plan, I felt an unsettling calm wash over me, almost like I was a scientist watching an experiment unfold. I would gather everything I could about her interactions with Tom. I would build a case against her, not just for the sake of revenge but to understand the depths of her deception. In the days following our confrontation, things at home went from bad to worse. Emily tried to talk, to explain, but words felt meaningless. I found myself becoming more distant, more focused on gathering proof rather than engaging in the emotional fallout. I started tracking her movements, noting down her excuses, and even digging through her social media accounts for any sign of Tom. I felt like a detective in a crime thriller, uncovering lies one by one. It was in this shroud of investigation that I unearthed more than I bargained for. Emily didn't just have an affair. She had built an entire world around it, complete with secret texts, late-night rendezvous, and a web of deceit that spiraled deeper than I imagined. The pain of each discovery cut like a knife, but it also fueled my resolve. I set up a system that would alert me whenever she received messages from Tom. I meticulously documented every interaction, constructing a timeline of her lies and betrayals. I felt a surge of power in understanding her patterns, in seeing her deceit laid out before me as if it were an algorithm I could dissect and analyze. But with every discovery, the emotional weight became heavier. I wanted revenge, yes, but I was also grappling with an overwhelming sadness. I realized that the woman I loved was slipping away from me, and the anger I felt was just a mask for the profound hurt that was taking root inside. I was caught in a storm of conflicting emotions, the desire for retribution, the need for closure, and the sorrow of losing what I thought was a solid foundation of love. The more I learned, the more I began to question everything. How could I have missed these signs? How could I have been so blind? I felt like I was losing myself in this whirlwind of betrayal, but I was determined to see it through. I needed to confront Emily again, armed with the evidence I was gathering, ready to lay bare the truth as I saw it. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about reclaiming the power she had taken from me. As the days turned into weeks, I transformed into a shadow of my former self. The hurt and betrayal twisted deep inside me, but I found an unexpected sense of clarity in my pursuit of evidence. I felt like a vigilante, piecing together the fragments of her deceit as if it were a puzzle. Each message I uncovered, every late-night rendezvous I confirmed was like fuel to my fire. But the emotional toll was mounting, and I knew I couldn't avoid confronting Emily again forever. The day finally came when I had amassed enough evidence, text messages, timestamps, and even some incriminating photos that I had taken when I followed her one evening. I knew that it was time to face her again, to lay it all out on the table. I wanted to show her just how deeply she had deceived me, to reveal the extent of her betrayal graphically so there would be no denying her actions. I waited until she came home from work. The air felt thick with unspoken tension as she walked in, her usual cheerful demeanor dulled by the weight of our previous confrontation. She looked at me, her eyes searching for a glimmer of forgiveness. Instead, she found the storm brewing within me. "Emily, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady but strained. I presented her with a folder containing everything I had gathered over the past few weeks. I laid it on the table with a force that startled her. "This is what I found. I want you to see it all." She glanced at the folder, her expression shifting from confusion to dread. "Jake, please, you don't need to do this." But I was already flipping through the contents, each piece of evidence a painful reminder of her choices. "No, I do. You need to see how far you've gone, how many lies you've told." I showed her the timestamps of her text messages to Tom, messages filled with affection and longing. I revealed the dinner reservation slip and the photos I had taken of them together, looking cozy and intimate. I watched the color drain from her face as the reality of what she had done washed over her. "Jake, I was confused. I never meant for it to go this far," she stammered, her voice trembling. But there was a new edge to her words, a realization that she no longer had the upper hand. "Confused? You call this confusion?" I gestured wildly at the evidence before her. "This isn't confusion, Emily. This is conscious choice. This is betrayal." I wanted to scream, to throw everything back at her face, but I also wanted her to understand the pain she had caused. The reality of our marriage had been turned inside out, and I couldn't help but feel that the love we once shared had died with her infidelity. "I thought I could fix things with you," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks, but I wasn't ready to hear her plead for mercy. "Fix things? You thought sleeping with another man would solve your problems." I shook my head, my disbelief morphing into anger. "How could you do this to me, to us? I was here for you, Emily. You didn't have to turn to him." For a moment, silence enveloped us both, and I could see her grappling with the weight of her actions. It was unsettling to witness her emotional unraveling, but a part of me felt a grim satisfaction in knowing that she was finally facing the consequences of her choices. The confrontation felt cathartic, but it also opened the floodgates for deeper discussions about our marriage. Emily began to explain her feelings, detailing her struggles with self-worth and how she felt increasingly isolated in our relationship. "I thought you were too focused on your work, on your analysis. I felt like I was losing you, and when Tom showed interest, it felt like I was finally being seen," she cried. I could see the regret etched across her face, and for a fleeting moment I felt a pang of empathy for her confusion. But that empathy was quickly crushed by the anger that bubbled back to the surface. "So, you chose to betray me instead of talking to me, instead of coming to me with your feelings." She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "I was scared, Jake. I thought you'd leave me. I thought you didn't love me anymore." The weight of her words hit me like a tidal wave. Here we were, two people who had built a life together, and instead of communicating, we had both been living in separate worlds, trapped by assumptions and fears. But that didn't excuse her betrayal, and I couldn't let her manipulate the narrative. "I can't just forget about this, Emily," I said, my voice firm yet pained. "Trust is gone. You shattered everything, and it's going to take more than apologies to fix this." She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "I can't let you touch me right now. I need time to think." That night I sat in silence, the reality of my marriage crashing down around me. I had always believed in fairness, in working through problems together, but this felt different. This was betrayal on a monumental scale. As I reflected on everything, I realized that I was at a crossroads. I could choose to stay and try to rebuild, but it would take a monumental effort from both of us, and I wasn't sure she could truly regain my trust. Or I could walk away, reclaim my autonomy, and start anew. The emotional turmoil swirled in my mind, each option weighing heavily. How could I trust someone who had shattered my heart? The choice I had to make loomed over me like a dark cloud, and I knew I had to find clarity amidst the chaos. I wanted revenge, yes, but I also wanted to find a way to heal. I needed to figure out how to move forward, whether that was with Emily or without her. The next steps were mine to determine, and I was determined to find a resolution that would bring me peace. The days that followed the confrontation were a blur of emotions and sleepless nights. I found myself oscillating between anger and despair, struggling to determine whether I could ever forgive Emily. Our home felt foreign, the laughter and warmth that once filled the space replaced by a tense silence. I was consumed by thoughts of betrayal, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being trapped within my own life. I wanted revenge, but what would that even look like? I had the evidence, the proof of her infidelity. Part of me wanted to take it to Tom, to expose their affair and let him know the havoc he had wreaked on my life. But what good would that do? I didn't want to drag myself through the mud or feel like I was spiraling further into chaos. Instead, I decided to channel my energy into something productive. I needed to regain control over my life. I started to immerse myself in my work. The algorithms I had developed for detecting patterns of deception became my refuge. Analyzing data brought me solace, a sense of clarity in the midst of emotional turmoil. I began to see my life as a complex model with variables that could be studied and reconstructed. Somehow, even in the chaos, the analytical part of my brain found a way to compartmentalize the emotional wreckage. One evening, as I sat at my desk, I had an idea. I could create an algorithm that would help me understand the patterns of deception in Emily's behavior. It wasn't just about her affair. It was about finding answers to the questions that plagued my mind. I began to gather all the data I had collected, text messages, timestamps, and even snippets of conversations I'd overheard. I would analyze her behavior over the past few months and pinpoint the moments when her deceit had begun. As I dove deeper into the analysis, I started to identify commonalities in her excuses and lies. I built a model that would track her patterns, revealing inconsistencies in her story. It was a bittersweet endeavor. While I found some satisfaction in uncovering her deception, I also felt the weight of the emotions that came with it. It was as if I was scrutinizing not just her actions but the very foundation of our relationship. Despite my analysis, I still faced the reality of our situation. Emily desperately wanted to reconcile, often apologizing and begging for another chance. She'd leave notes around the house, expressing her love and regret, but I couldn't help but feel that they were hollow gestures. Each time I saw her, I felt a knot tighten in my chest. It was hard to reconcile the woman who had betrayed me with the woman I had once loved so deeply. One evening, as I sat at the dining room table surrounded by my notes, I heard Emily approach. Her footsteps were tentative, as if she feared disrupting the fragile silence. "Jake," she said softly, "can we talk?" Reluctantly, I nodded, pushing my papers aside. She sat across from me, her hands trembling as she clasped them together. "I know you're hurting, and I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want to do whatever it takes to make this right." Her eyes glistened with tears, and I could see the remorse etched on her face. "Do you even understand what you've done?" I asked, my voice edged with bitterness. "You shattered my trust, made me question everything we built together. And for what? Fling with someone who was just a distraction." She nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I know I messed up and I can't take it back, but I want to show you that I can change. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust again." Her words hung in the air, a part of me wanting to believe her, but the memories of her infidelity were too fresh. "How do I know you won't do this again, Emily? How do I know this isn't just a temporary feeling for you?" "I can't promise I won't ever make mistakes," she replied, her voice shaky. "But I want to work on myself, on us. I'll go to counseling, I'll be completely transparent with you, whatever it takes." Counseling. It was a noble idea, but the question loomed large in my mind. Did I even want to put in the effort? Could I really invest my heart in a relationship that felt so irreparably broken? I felt the tension in my chest tighten, and I could sense the weight of her gaze as she waited for my response. "I don't know, Emily," I finally said. "I'm not sure I can go back to how things were. I don't know if I can trust you again." She took a deep breath as if steeling herself for what was to come. "I understand. I just want you to know that I'm willing to fight for us. You mean everything to me, and I'm so sorry for what I've done." I was torn between the longing to cling to what we had and the harsh reality of her betrayal. I remember my algorithms swirling in my mind like a tempest, representing different paths I could take. Each possibility was a different outcome, and none of them seemed to lead to a happy ending. As the days turned into weeks, the tension mounted. I found myself caught in an emotional limbo, questioning whether I could forgive her while also grappling with my own feelings of betrayal. The algorithm I had built continued to weigh on my mind, and I started to realize that I needed to take a step back. In the midst of it all, I began to understand something crucial. Revenge was not the answer. I didn't want to play games or drag Emily through the mud. I needed to focus on what was best for me, to reclaim my sense of self and my happiness. While the desire for revenge had fueled my actions in the beginning, I realized that holding onto that anger would only continue to hurt me. So I made a decision. I would confront Emily one last time, not with anger or accusations, but with clarity about what I truly wanted. I needed to communicate my feelings, to find a resolution that would either heal our relationship or allow me to walk away. It was time to take control of my life once more, no longer a victim of betrayal, but a man ready to reclaim his happiness, whatever that might look like. The night I decided to confront Emily again, I felt an uneasy calm wash over me. It was as if I had finally accepted the storm brewing inside and was ready to face it head-on. I had spent days considering what I wanted to say, how to articulate the jumble of emotions that had consumed me since the affair had come to light. I needed to be honest with her, not just about my feelings, but about the direction I saw for our future. As I sat on the couch, I could hear her moving around in the kitchen, the clatter of dishes and the soft hum of music filling the air. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. I wanted this conversation to be different. I wanted clarity instead of anger. "Emily," I called out, my voice steady. She walked into the living room, a hopeful smile on her face that quickly faltered when she saw the serious expression I wore. "Hey, what's up?" she asked, her voice cautious. I gestured for her to sit down and she complied, her eyes searching mine for a hint of what I was about to say. "I've been thinking a lot about us," I began, my heart racing. "About everything that's happened and how it's affected both of us." Her expression shifted to one of anticipation, her hands clenched in her lap. "I've been thinking too, Jake. I know I've hurt you and I want to make things right. I'm committed to fixing this, whatever it takes." "That's what I want to talk about," I replied, trying to keep my tone even. "I appreciate that you want to fix things, but I need to be honest with myself first. I'm not sure I can move past what happened." Her face fell and I could see the flicker of fear in her eyes. "What do you mean? Are you saying you want to end things?" I took a moment to gather my thoughts, weighing my words carefully. "What I'm saying is that I need to consider whether I can truly rebuild trust. You hurt me in a way I didn't think was possible. I need to understand if I can forgive you, and I need to figure out if this relationship is worth fighting for." The look of desperation on her face was heartbreaking. "I would never have done it if I knew how much it would hurt you. I was in a dark place and I made selfish choices, but I'm willing to do anything to rebuild that trust." "I know you are," I said gently, but I could feel the weight of my decision pressing down on me. "And I want to believe you, but I can't ignore the reality of the situation. Right now, our relationship feels more like a house of cards, and I don't know if I want to invest the time and energy to rebuild it." Tears welled in her eyes as she processed my words. "So what are you saying? That you're done? That you want to walk away?" "I think I need to take a step back," I replied, my voice breaking slightly. "I need time to figure out what I really want. I don't want to make any decisions out of anger or hurt, but I also can't pretend everything is okay when it's not." She nodded slowly, her expression a mix of understanding and devastation. "I get it, Jake. I really do. I know I've broken your heart and I can't take that back. I just wish I could." The silence that followed hung heavily in the air, and I could sense the pain radiating from her. It was hard to witness, but I had to hold firm. I had spent weeks in emotional turmoil, and now was the time to assert my needs. Maybe some time apart would be good for both of us, I suggested, choosing my words carefully. I need to focus on myself, on what I want and who I want to be, and you should focus on your own healing too. Emily's shoulders slumped and she looked away, tears streaming down her cheeks. I don't want to lose you, Jake. You're everything to me. I know it feels that way now, but right now, I need to be alone, I said softly. Not forever, but just until I can sort through my feelings without the weight of what's happened looming over me. I could see her battling her emotions, torn between pleading for me to stay and accepting the truth of what I was saying. If that's what you need, then I understand, but I'll be here when you're ready to talk. I'll always be here. With that, I knew I had taken a significant step, one that felt both liberating and terrifying. It was time to reclaim my autonomy, to prioritize my needs above the weight of her guilt and sorrow. As painful as it was, I realized that walking away wasn't an act of vengeance. It was an act of self-preservation. The following days were some of the hardest I'd ever faced. I moved into the spare bedroom, creating distance between us physically and emotionally. It felt like I was living in limbo, each day dragging on as I wrestled with memories of our life together. I was haunted by flashes of laughter, intimacy, and dreams we had shared, now tainted by betrayal. Yet in that space, I found hints of clarity. I began to reflect on what had gone wrong, not just with Emily but within myself. I realized I had also neglected my own needs, allowing the monotony of daily life to overshadow the essence of who I was. I started to reconnect with aspects of myself I had forgotten, pouring energy into my work, exploring hobbies I had neglected, and even reconnecting with friends I hadn't seen in ages. Through it all, I began to see myself not just as a victim of betrayal, but as a person capable of healing and growth. I could feel the weight of anger lifting, replaced by a burgeoning sense of hope. I knew that regardless of the outcome with Emily, I would emerge stronger, either renewed in the relationship or ready to embrace a new chapter in my life. The decision I had made to step back from the relationship was not an end, but rather a new beginning, a chance to reclaim my identity and find joy in my own existence. I wasn't just a husband betrayed. I was Jake, ready to redefine my future, with or without Emily. As the days turned into weeks, the initial shock of separation began to soften into a steady rhythm. I found solace in solitude, clarity thriving in the absence of constant emotional turmoil. I threw myself into my work with renewed vigor, diving deep into the algorithms I had been developing. Each breakthrough felt like a step toward reclaiming not just my career but my sense of self. I was no longer just a husband. I was Jake, a man with ambitions, dreams, and a future that was mine to shape. Emily and I communicated occasionally, mostly about practical matters, bills, the house, and other logistical concerns. Each conversation felt like walking a tightrope, balancing between the past we shared and the painful present we inhabited. I could tell she was trying to navigate her own feelings of remorse and regret, often expressing a desire to work things out. But I needed time, and she had to respect that. One day, as I sat in my home office absorbed in data analysis, I received a message from Emily. "Can we meet to talk?" It read. My heart raced at the thought. I hadn't realized how much time had passed since we last sat down together. I hesitated, weighing my options. Part of me wanted to avoid the inevitable confrontation, but another part knew that if we were ever going to move forward, together or apart, we needed to address the elephant in the room. I agreed to meet her at a nearby park. It was a neutral ground, a place where I hoped we could talk openly without the weight of our walls bearing down on us. When I arrived, the sun was setting, casting a warm glow over everything. Emily was already there, sitting on a bench, her eyes focused on the horizon. As I approached, she turned to me, and for a fleeting moment I saw the spark of the woman I had fallen in love with long ago. "Jake," she began, her voice trembling. "Thank you for coming." "Of course," I replied, trying to summon a calm I didn't entirely feel. "I think it's time we talk." We settled onto the bench, the silence between us thick with unspoken words. Finally, she spoke. I've been doing a lot of thinking since we last talked, about my mistakes about us. I know I hurt you deeply, and I'm so sorry for everything. I appreciate you acknowledging that, I said, my voice steady but still laced with emotion. But I need you to understand that it's not just about the apology. It's about rebuilding trust, and that takes time. She nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. I get that. I've started going to therapy. I'm trying to understand why I did what I did. I know I let my insecurities drive my actions, and I'm committed to doing the work to change. A part of me wanted to be hopeful, but I reminded myself of the pain I had felt when the truth first came to light. That's good to hear, but change doesn't happen overnight, Emily. I've learned that I can't just jump back into things without truly processing everything. I don't want you to feel pressured, she said, her voice softening. But I want you to know that I'm here waiting for you. I don't want to lose you, and I'm ready to prove that I can be the partner you deserve. As I listened to her, I felt a mix of emotions. I could see her sincerity, but I was also acutely aware of how fragile our relationship felt. Emily, I won't lie and say that I'm ready to dive back in. I still need time to figure out what I want, whether that's with you or not. But I'm willing to keep the lines of communication open. Her gaze softened and she nodded. I understand. I just want you to know that I'm committed to working on myself, regardless of what happens between us. You were right when you said I needed to take responsibility for my actions. We talked for what felt like hours, each word a careful negotiation of our shared history and the uncertain future that lay ahead. I expressed my fears, my doubts, and the hope I felt lurking beneath the surface. She shared her journey toward understanding herself and the mistakes she had made. While we didn't reach any definitive conclusions, the conversation felt like a step forward, a bridge built between our past and whatever future lay ahead. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the park, I felt a sense of closure in that moment. I finally understood that while I may never fully forget the betrayal, I could choose to move forward on my own terms. Whether that meant rebuilding our relationship or creating a new life apart, I was prepared to embrace whatever came next. In the weeks that followed, I continued to focus on myself. I reconnected with friends, pursued new interests, and even started jogging again, something I had let fall by the wayside during the turbulence of my marriage. I realized that healing was not just about the relationship. It was about rediscovering who I was as an individual. Emily and I remained in touch, maintaining a cautious but hopeful dialogue. Each conversation felt like a small step forward, a way to assess whether there was still a foundation to build upon. We both knew that the journey would take time, but for the first time, I felt optimistic about the possibilities ahead. I had learned a hard lesson about trust and betrayal, but I also discovered the importance of self-awareness and growth. I learned that it was okay to prioritize my feelings and needs, and that healing was a process, not a destination. It was empowering to recognize that I held the reins of my life, ready to navigate whatever path lay ahead. As I looked toward the future, I felt a sense of peace within me. No matter how the story with Emily unfolded, I was ready to reclaim my happiness and move forward, no longer a victim of betrayal, but a man ready to embrace new beginnings.